Welcome to part 2 of the Donald Lime Kiln videos. This one goes back into the history of the land, and we try to find out who might have built it, who ran it, who owned it at different times. There's little mention of the Donald Lime Kiln in published White Creek history. Paul Jones mentions it in his booklet, Our Yesteryears, which was published in 1962 and provided a photograph. He claimed it was built in about 1770 by Ebenezer Dunnell, and it was operated by him. He also claimed the Dunnells had a hammer mill and forge there and built tools. This is about the only mention of the business I have found in local histories, and much of it turns out to be incorrect. To get to the bottom of who built the kiln and mill and when, I went back to the beginning of settlement in that area of White Creek. In the late summer of 1765, Lieutenant Duncan McVicker and some other half-pay officers promised land in return for their service in the French and Indian War, came to White Creek looking to claim their lots. McVicker's association with the Schuylers may have led to them hearing about this particular location. Anne McVicker Grant, in her book Memoirs of an American Lady, describes what went on, although she herself never got to White Creek. My father went up in the summer with a retinue of Indians and disbanded soldiers, etc., headed by a land surveyor. While she does not mention the name of the soldiers, she was only 10 at the time, and I don't think her father wanted her becoming acquainted with certain of the men that came up. They all received their returns of survey on July 11, 1765, and are listed in the calendar of colonial manuscripts as Lieutenants William Gregor, John Gregor, Ann Gordon, James Bain, and Duncan McVicker. Ann earlier mentioned that her father bought out 2 young officers who wanted to go home to Britain. He put together his lot and these 2 others to form a 6,000-acre parcel he named Clarendon Township. The importance of this will soon be seen. Almost no one writing about local history has looked into the military patents and who settled them. One who did was Amos Mosquip, who wrote about it in the book The Old Cambridge District, written for the DAR and published in 1941. Innity states, examination of Major McVicker's patent indicates that the officers whose claims he took over were Adjutant William Gregor and Lieutenant Stewart, tracts of 3,000 and 2,000 acres respectively, starting east of Briggs Corners and the state line and running off northeasterly so as to include practically all of Shasbury Hollow and a good part of West Mountain and the town of Shasbury. There are several problems with this description. One is that although the general location is about right, it couldn't start east of Briggs Corners and run off northeasterly and fit the description Anne gave of it as being cut about in half by the 20-mile line, which became the state line later on. Another is that William Gregor's patent is well north of Briggs Corners, was only 2,000 acres, and that John Gregor filed a caveat in Albany concerning it in 1789 on behalf of his deceased son, indicating that William had never sold it. A third is that there is no Stewart patent to be found, nor room for one. The Stewarts did own land north of Gannon Road. That would probably be in the Walloomsac patent or the Van Corlear Lake patent, but they didn't have a patent of their own. There's no record of it. The only conclusion I can come to that would fit Anne's description of Clarendon is that Duncan bought out Ann Gordon and James Bain, giving him a 6,000-acre parcel that does fit the description of running northeast through Shasbury Hollow and split about in half by what became the border of New York and Vermont. Duncan became frustrated with the continual problems with the New Hampshire grantees, and he and his family returned to Scotland for a short visit in 1768, leaving Clarendon in the hands of his friend, Albany County Magistrate John Monroe. The only thing that doesn't fit the description here is that neither Ann Gordon or James Bain were in a hurry to return to the old mother country. They were both around years later. James Bain stayed till 1772 when he went back on active duty. John Monroe moved up from Albany in 1771 or 1772. Where he settled is a question. Most of the Vermonters say he lived west of Shaftesbury, so he might have settled on either the Bain or Gordon patents instead of his own 4,000-acre Fowlis estate up on the Battenkill in West Arlington. On the other hand, his mortgages and other writings say he was of Fowlis, which is west of Arlington, not Shaftesbury. He started selling off lots in the northern half of the Bain patent. The lots in the southern half were better agricultural land, and Duncan may have sold them off himself before he left. I believe Duncan McVicker probably sold him Clarendon after he decided not to return to America. John's mortgages on lots in the Bain patent indicate that lot number 14, on which the lime kiln and mill are located, was already owned by John McCool in the 1770s. John was undoubtedly related to Thomas McCool, one of the early settlers of the Cambridge patent, who lived somewhere between Post Corners and Mount Tom. The latter was probably named after him. John died in 1798. Shortly before he died, he sold 2 lots of land, one to Margaret Hill and one to Israel Brayton Perry. Ebenezer Dunnell bought lot number 14 from Ephraim Preston in 1803, I believe. When Ephraim acquired it is not known. It seems to me the desirability of this site for producing lime was recognized when the land was first surveyed in 1765. The lots were laid out either when it was surveyed or shortly after. All of them are 4-sided lots except for lot 14, which is odd-shaped and includes almost no arable land, unlike most of the others. It does include a long strip running up the mountain, probably for access to limestone. Known ownership seems to begin with John McCool. Secondly, Ephraim Preston, with Ebenezer Dunnell being the third owner. Little is known of John McCool, other than he lived from 1715 to 1798. He would have been 50 when lot number 14 became available. He doesn't seem to have had any sons, so how long he would have been able to keep running the lime operation himself is questionable. So who built the lime kiln and hammer mill? That's still uncertain. It could have been John McCool, or it could have been John Monroe, who built and operated a number of mills. The kiln was certainly built first, then the mill to support it later. Many of John Monroe's letters and papers were found in Quebec a number of years ago. There might be clues in there if I can get access to them. How long did it operate? The railroads coming in the late 1840s would certainly have put it out of business, but it's likely it was shut down before that. It used huge quantities of wood, probably 8 or 10 cords to a burn, and the countryside was becoming denuded by the 1840s, with the land being walled and used for sheep starting in the 1820s. The most probable period of its operation was from the late 1760s through about 1820.